Imagine that you are in a dream. For days you've been trying to get out of this maze. At first you're just a dot, then a line, then a three-dimensional being. A sponge. You're a sponge. You wake up, you're in a bed you don't know. Pain. Shining lights. Pain. It smells like a hospital. Pain again, bombarded with pain. You try to move and you realize that right now, you can't move any of your limbs other than your left arm. Apparently this sponge nightmare reoccurred every morning. I guess it has something to do with the fact that every morning I was washed in bed. Every morning they were peeling off layers and layers of bandages and burned skin. And suddenly, my last memory seemed so far away. How did I end up here? In the past 20 years, the main part of my life has been physical and mental training for teenagers before the military service. During one of those workouts, I took off my sunglasses at the worst possible moment. That day, we were training in an artificial sand dune that was constructed too close to a power line. Towards the end of the training, I took off my sunglasses. My hand reached a distance of 0.5 meters from the power line. I still remember the last two thoughts that went through my head. The first, wow, this is close. And the second thought, I didn't have time to finish. It had something to do with birds sitting on wires unaffected by them. Apparently, I'm not a bird, and I, unlike them, do touch the ground. At that moment, electricity jumped, like a lightning strike. The electricity from the cable went through my body to the ground. Flame burst from my body, and I rolled 12 meters down the sand dune. Fire came out of my clothes, and now you can see that in a typical burn, the heat comes from the outside. In electric burn, the heat is produced by the body itself. Seeing the clothes alone allows us to imagine the intensity of the heat coming out of my body. At the bottom of the sand dune, the pupils that I was training started to perform CPR on me. They had to forcefully open up my jaw and clean the body fluids coming out of my mouth and nose. After a few rounds of CPR, apparently I came back to life. During that time, some of them ran to call for help. One of them already started receiving instructions from the medic center. For 35 minutes, those guys were there alone. We can only try and imagine how it felt like eternity for them. When the medic service arrived, my throat was already swollen and air was barely flowing into my lungs. Although they gave me 3 doses of painkillers, I kept pushing the paramedics aside. Again, my pupils came to my aid. They grabbed me from the open flesh and managed to pin me down to the stretcher. That was the only way to evacuate me to the ambulance, waiting a few hundred meters away. At the last moment, after 2 failed attempts to open my airways, the Israeli Air Force Rescue Unit arrives at the scene. This is the unit in which I served. During my service in the unit, I participated in dozens of these kinds of rescue missions. I was the one taking care of the critical patients. In the back of your mind, there's always this thought of what if it was me, but you never really believe that you will be the one on the other side. You are normally just operating on a form of an autopilot, giving the best treatment possible. Together with the civilian medics, they managed to intubate me and evacuated me to Tel HaShomer Hospital. 12 days later, I wake up and my new journey begins. At first, everyone seemed surprised that I even woke up, and they were calling me a hero for some reason. For years, I've been training others how to develop habits that will help them overcome hardships and succeed in challenges, how grand they may be. Habits such as correct inner speech, changing thoughts, shifting focus, imagining, were a main part of the discipline that I chose to pass on. And what's the best way to learn something? Teaching others and lead them by example. Well, now I got the chance to prove to myself and others that the system does work. At first, it actually did. 2 weeks after I woke up, I faced one of the biggest challenges yet. I arrived at this chair after they told me that this morning, after the treatment, I'll be doing a workout. A workout, I ask, not even bringing into account that right now I can't move both of my legs and can barely move 2 fingers in my right arm. They laid me on my side, placed a sheet behind my back, connected it to a crane, lifted me, put me on this chair, and told me that I have to sit for 40 minutes. The pain increased, something I didn't think was even possible. Suddenly, after a month, my legs were facing down. Blood started flowing, and things began to swell and open up. True, the pain was insane. But more than the pain, what shook me was the realization that I'm not me anymore. I'm a man that just 3 months ago competed in the first CrossFit competition that was held in Israel, and now I'm barely able to sit down. And no one will agree to promise me that I'll ever stand, let alone walk or run. You're lucky that we didn't chop off your legs, they say. Every focus on a gap between expectations and reality leads to frustration. But when it has something to do with your perception of self, it affects us on a deeper level. There are 3 forms of actions that we can use to relieve the frustration. The first, you lower your expectation and you match them with reality. Only after we accept the situation as it is, we can start moving out of it, not out of frustration, into a new preferred reality. The second is to bring reality into the ideal level, working hard and changing reality itself. The third is whining and complaining, finding good reasons why we cannot change. When I was sitting there on that chair, to tell you the truth, that was the path I've chosen. And what's the most addictive form of whining? Whining with an address, which is basically blaming. At those moments, I blame whoever built this sand dune that close to a power line, and frustration drops, but then it goes right up. So I blame again, and I promise they will pay for this, and frustration drops, but then it goes right up. So I blame more and more people, and so the cycle continues. And then I realize that I'm slowly fading. My energy is draining. I'm stuck in a loop. Luckily for me, that for years I've been teaching others how not to whine, not to complain. So I recognize these voices in my head. I wake up out of this loop and start focusing on responsibility. I assign the responsibility for the lawsuit and the rest of the BS to my father. To myself I say, Yoav, from now on you focus only on healing. So if the doctors tell me to do 30 minutes in the knee bending machine, I do 90 for each leg. If they were gently tearing up the melted skin underneath my armpit, after they leave the room, together with my aunt, we tear the skin and we tie the hand behind my head. And this is why today I have a full range of motion. I determine how I feel. And when I focus on what I can do, on my responsibility, on my ability to respond, then and only then I can determine how I feel. The formula works. Day by day, the sensation of influence is growing, and in accordance, so is the pace of the healing process. The whole time escorted by a great medical staff tending to me with sensitivity and care. With them, a strong supporting community of family, friends, and a lot of pupils that keep coming to the bedside to support. This attitude created a rapid healing process, and 2 weeks later, Professor Chayak arrives at my bed informing me that I have only 3% open flesh. Only 3% out of the initial 70. He goes on and says that for 19 years that he was in the burn unit, he hasn't seen anyone with 70% burn that doesn't get infection. And that I'm about to go to the rehab center where I will relearn how to walk and function again. Excitement, euphoria. And what comes with euphoria? That night, I feel like something is eating me up. And the next morning, the doctors inform me that I got an infection and that now 25% of my flesh had reopened. Frustration, depression, I'm in this loop again. Day by day, the situation is worsening. And no matter what I try to do, changing thoughts, shifting focus, imagining, nothing helps. I'm stuck in this loop. I'm losing faith in myself. I keep telling myself that it's all a lie. I'm no hero. I'm an imposter. I'm a liar. 9 days later, weighing just a little bit over 50 kilos, having more than 35% of my flesh reopened, comes this morning where I don't want to live anymore. I can't wear this aero mask anymore. And when I ask one of the pupils I love not to enter the room, I realize that this is it. It's over. And then this guy comes to visit. This is my Uncle Sammy. You can see him here getting his... Actually, it's the first Medal of Honor that was presented in Israel by David Ben-Gurion. He's my personal role model and a living legend. But when I was there, he was 86 years old and he had heart issues, so the whole family knew that you do not tell Uncle Sammy that Yoav is in the hospital. Out of fear that Sammy will get too excited and have a heart attack. Suddenly I get this phone call in which they tell me that Sammy found out. He's on his way, we cannot stop him. Okay, how much time do I have? He's in the elevator. Damn. I wipe the tears so Sami won't see me crying, and the second he enters the room, I grab the sides of the bed and start doing dips as if nothing happened. How's it going, Uncle Sammy? What happened, Yoav? Don't worry about it. What happened to you, Yoav? Don't worry about it, Sami. It's all cosmetics. I keep going on, and in the end, Sami believes me and leaves the room. I feel relieved. I tell myself I can drop this mask and go back into crying, but I don't need to cry anymore. Why? Why the sudden change? What's the difference between a few minutes earlier where I couldn't let people enter the room and now I feel restored again? Why? A few minutes earlier, I tried to exit the suffering for myself. I tried to look strong, to feel strong, maybe even to prove to everyone that my method works. But when Sami enters the room, I need to be strong. I have to be strong in order to save Uncle Sami. Our greatest power doesn't come in our will to succeed, not even in our need to preserve the integrity of our self-perception. Our greatest power comes when we have to save or serve something greater than ourselves. When we are worried about ourselves, we lead ourselves into suffering. Taking care of others leads us to freedom. After this visit, I got back into healing. And a few weeks later, I'm already in the rehab center where I begin to organize and plan this crazy 90 kilometers relay race for teenagers, dedicated for fallen soldiers. It starts near my house and ends at the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem. I come back to this part of me that I had forgotten, and that's the one that completes the picture. The search for meaning, serving something greater than me that's important to me. This journey continued till this day, and thanks to it, I find myself in countless moments of extreme gratification, doing things I couldn't even imagine in the bed in the burn center. Today, I'm a father to this charming, special boy, married to a wife I love deeply. I'm a part of I'm a part of two awesome families. One that I was born into, and the second that I had a chance to create out of a place of loyalty, truth, and true power that comes out of the urge to serve something greater than ourselves. So what do I take out of this journey? First, the best way to learn something is to teach it to others and to lead a life of example. Second, an attitude of focusing on responsibility, on our ability to respond, maybe even developing a small allergy for blaming. And third, when we are worried about ourselves, we lead ourselves into suffering. Taking care of others leads us to freedom. Thank you.